jokes aside, I'm Tim Sparks from, I'm the Manager of Urban Water at the Department of Water, Environment and Regulation, and thanks to those who are here today. It's a real quality audience. Before I go anywhere, I want to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on traditional lands of the Noongar people, and that I pay my respects to elders both past and present. I'd like to recognise the board agencies and members of the new waterways. So we've got the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, my own department, the UDIA, Water Corporation and WALCA. Been a busy week for new waterways, hasn't it, Shell?
It has.
Lots on, but today I'm really excited because having seen a part of this talk, it is an absolute beauty. So today we have Rita Chandra, who's Project Manager at the Integrated Urban Water with Yarra Valley Water, and it's about valuing the benefits of water-sensitive projects. And I think that really resonates strongly here in the West, where we do it well, and that's generally where we understand the values strongly. And so this is a really interesting approach we're going to hear about today, and I really enjoyed what I've heard about it, and I'm sure you will too. So without further ado, I will welcome Rita to the stage.
Thanks Tim for the introduction, and thanks to Shelley as well for getting me across to Perth to present on this. I think it's really important that we do knowledge sharing across the industry to share our learnings and also overcome some of these challenges together. So Tim mentioned that I am from Yarra Valley Water, but for this presentation and for this project we're actually working in collaboration with Melbourne Water and Maroondah City Council. The project is being led by Melbourne Water, and it's part of a number of projects under their Reimagining Your Creek program. Just to start off, just wanted to reflect on this quote, time is money. I'm sure many of you have heard it before and probably even used it in your day-to-day life. I know that when I was a student I had a lot of free time but not much money, and now that I'm working full-time, have a little bit more money but not much free time.
Very true.
And this is just a reflection of one of the small things that we value in our day-to-day lives without even realising it. Now that I have less free time, sometimes I'm often willing to pay a bit more to save some of that time. So for example, I sometimes drive instead of catching public transport because it saves me 20 or 30 minutes, or sometimes even pay for tolls if I'm running late. And I'm sure many of you can think of some of the things that you might do in your day-to-day life where you pay that little bit more to get some of that time back. And this really relates beyond time around some of the decisions that we make around things in our daily life, around health or jobs or our hobbies. And these things that influence the decisions that we make, without realising it, we're subconsciously putting a value on those things. And this goes a bit broader beyond us as individuals, but also what we value as communities. So when we move into new houses or buy new properties, we do think about the neighbourhoods that we live in, if they're safe neighbourhoods, if they do have access to parks or sporting grounds, good schools, and wider public amenities that we naturally think about when we make some of these decisions. And this concept really underpins what I'm talking about today around how we value things as a community and how that translates into some of the projects that we work on and how they provide those outcomes for the community. And so today I'm just going to talk about a project that we've worked on to quantify some of this value that we are providing to the community. And we've used a number of economic evaluation tools developed by the CRC for water sensitive cities, and also some work done by Frontier Economics for the Water Services Association of Australia. And we've gone through a bit of a journey with this process and used a cost-benefit analysis to really facilitate discussions around this project and the value that it might be creating for the community and what that means for us as organisations and our priorities. So Tarralla Creek is located in a highly urbanised area of Melbourne in the suburb of Croydon. The project involves taking an existing piped and channeled creek and converting it back into a natural waterway. And it's about a 2.2 kilometre stretch of the creek. The creek is located near a number of public open spaces and also the Croydon Township to the north, and it's a key link between that township and a lot of the community. The project also involves a stormwater harvesting component and an upgrade to the existing wetland. And on the left here is an image of the existing wetland, and on the right is a concept of what the future wetland could look like. The concept design was completed by GHD, and these concept images were a really important part of the process in the community consultation done by Melbourne Water with that local community. And this is an image of the Channel Creek at the moment. This section is actually fenced off. And this is really the vision for what we think the site would look like. And this was another image that was used in the community consultation. So like I mentioned, this project is part of a wider set of works being done by Melbourne Water as part of the Reimagining Your Creek program. So Tarralla Creek is one of the 5 trial sites which are looking at converting these existing channels or piped or concreted drains back into natural waterways. And the key driver projects are wider livability outcomes, so protecting and enhancing public green space and providing public health, environmental and economic benefits to the community. So knowing this and looking at the vision for the site, we embarked on a bit of a journey to really understand the value that this project would provide to the community. The cost estimate is about $15 million with some funding committed by Melbourne Water, but we haven't really got full funding for the project. And so we wanted to use this process to really support the business case and gain traction for getting funding for this project. And this is where the economic evaluation tools came in. We've used the value tool and the benefit cost analysis tool developed by the CRC for water sensitive cities. This forms a wider package of works that the CRC is working on providing economic evaluation tools to support water sensitive projects. We've also used a ready reckoner tool developed by Frontier Economics, and this was part of their work for the Water Services Association of Australia, a bit of work that they're doing around the health benefits that are created from water sensitive projects. And so the value tool and the Frontier Economics tool are more focused on valuing non-market values. Non-market value is essentially goods or services that can't be readily or traded. So an example that I often use is the health benefits that you might get from cycling to and from work each day. You can't go and trade those in your local farmer's market or supermarket. And this is really an overview of the discussion process that we have gone through. And this is well supported by the structure of the CRC benefit cost analysis tool. I'll get into this in a bit more detail, but at a high level, we got together and discussed the project objectives and discussed the benefits that the project might generate, and then going through and adding in the cost and discussions around risk. We had our cost benefit results and used this for further discussions with our organisations. So the first step was really getting everybody on the same page, and what we did was get the working group together and have a workshop around what the project drivers are, what the objectives of this project are, and what that means for the impact on the community. An important part of this process is really understanding the project and the impacts on that local area with and without the project. So what would the community look like if we didn't do this? And this is a tab from the cost benefit analysis tool, which really facilitates this process and helps to document that discussion that we had. The next step was really having a lengthy discussion around what we think the project will do for the community and what benefits it might provide. We had a lot of discussion around the environmental and social benefits, but as also the economic benefits that might be generated. Here you can see a number of the benefits that we identified, including improved amenity, improved waterway health, reduced nutrient discharge to the waterway, potable water savings, an increase in biodiversity, and improved health outcomes from the access to the green space. We also had a significant discussion around the community activation components of this project. And I've lumped community activation here, but what that discussion really involved was discussions around how we can involve the Indigenous community and potentially implement a gathering place, how we can get schools involved to learn about the waterway and the habitat and also use the green space, and also local disability service providers that might be able to use this space also for wider health outcomes for their members. It also included discussions around the bike path and connecting it to existing bike trails that might be used for transport or for commuters as well. So the next step was really to try and put some values on these benefits that we identified. And this is where the non-market value tool developed by the CRC and the Ready Reckoner tool by Frontier Economics came in. The non-market value tool is essentially a database of existing research and information around some of these non-market values, and a lot of this research has already tried to quantify some of these values. The really good thing about the value tool is that it breaks down a lot of these benefits into categories, and it also ranks the quality of the information. So at the outset you have a lot of this at the tip of your hands. One thing that I will mention is that the value tool has more of an environmental benefits focus. There are some social benefits in there, but it doesn't quite capture some of the health benefits, which is why we use the Frontier Economics work. When using this information, there's a couple of considerations to take into account. First of all, it's a good starting point. So the database is a really good starting point for trying to figure out what benefits your project might generate, but also the data available. But it's not a substitute for potentially going out and doing your own community survey or testing with the community what they value and what they might want to see achieved out of the project. The other thing to note is a number of assumptions are needed to use the data. It's not a simple plug and play into your cost benefit. You do need to understand the demographic and the community that you're impacting. And it also is important to understand that the data needs to be relevant and applicable to your context. The information in the tool is relevant to different contexts around Australia, so it's important to recognise that for us in Melbourne we need to use data that's applicable to Melbourne. So for example, using something here in Perth might not work in Melbourne. The third point I just wanted to make is this sometimes generates a bit of confusion, but monetising a benefit is not actually linked to the pricing or the rates that might be generated in the organisation. It really is just a reflection of the value that the community puts on some of these attributes, and it's really a relative measure compared to something that we use day to day, which is money. So this is an example benefit that we identified and quantified. The benefit is an ecological improvement in stream health. The study that underpins this data is a survey that was done in Melbourne across 2 suburbs, asking the community what they would pay for an improvement in the stream health. So this is a willingness to pay study, and what it found was that households were willing to pay $88 per year for an improvement in their local stream health. So we made a number of assumptions around what population this might apply to for our project and what demographic it would apply to. As a project working group, we agreed that it applies to the population of Croydon, the suburb of Croydon where Tarralla Creek is located, and we used average demographic statistics, so the average household size, to apply this value. And that's how we got the $1.2 million of benefit generated each year. So that's a year-on-year benefit. Another example is a benefit of improved amenity. This is actually a little calculation in the value tool, which helps to calculate the percentage value. So based on the calculation that we did, it found that a 0.14% increase in property values generated from the proximity to the wetland in Croydon. We used a 400 metre radius to calculate this value, which is an input into that calculation. And using a median house price for that area, we were able to calculate that this is a benefit of 1.8 million generated. It's a once-off payment, so the property price increase is only once off. It's not a year-on-year payment, so the value is only accrued in the first year after the project is implemented. And so going through this process, we quantified as many of the benefits that we identified in the initial workshop. And we were able to quantify all the benefits highlighted in orange here. The benefits that we weren't able to quantify, it doesn't mean that they're not quantifiable. It just means you need to do a bit more research or go out to the community and actually ask them around some of those wider benefits, how they value it or how much they might be willing to pay for it. Given the time constraints that we had, we decided to only use the existing research and data available to quantify some of these benefits. And we also use the number of industry values in this, like the nitrogen offset, which is a Melbourne Water measure, and also the potable water savings is an industry value around avoided infrastructure costs. So after inputting these quantified values into the cost benefit tool and also the cost estimate generated from concept designed by GHD, we were able to get our results. So the benefit cost ratio is 1.25, which essentially means that for every dollar invested in this project, $1.25 of community benefit is generated. It's important to note that we also got this analysis peer reviewed. So David and Saeed, who helped the CRC develop this tool, are located here in Perth at University of WA, and they kindly donated their time and reviewed our analysis, and that was really to check that we didn't have any optimistic bias. We didn't overinflate our benefits because we wanted to get it over the line, and we didn't double count some of the benefits. Sometimes there's a bit of overlap. It was also to check that we've used the tool correctly and that we've used the numbers correctly. The other thing that was really good in the cost benefit tool was the feature to have a discussion around risk. There's a dedicated tab to have a discussion around the risk that the benefits might not be fully realised when the project is implemented. And as a working group, we had a discussion around the risk of this, and we agreed that there's a 15% chance that the benefits might not be fully implemented. So that essentially means that this $19 million is after that risk factor is applied. So after getting this result, the next step of the process was really to have a discussion around what this means for all the different stakeholders involved and the project partners. So there are clear benefits to some of the organisational priorities. For example, drinking water savings is a clear water security benefit for Yarra Valley Water. Similarly, the reduced nitrogen to Port Phillip Bay is a clear benefit for Melbourne Water, as their mandate is to protect waterway health. But it's really a lot of these other benefits, the improved amenity and the improved human health, that are more unclear in attributing to any one organisation. And this is where a lot of the discussion was generated. We had a workshop discussion around how some of these benefits might be attributed to different organisations and what this means for our organisation's priorities and how it links back to our strategies. We went through this workshop process to proportionally attribute some of the benefits, so the percentages, to some of these organisations. And then now we're in a process of taking back that information and having a discussion with our organisations around potentially getting funding for this project. We also use this process and the discussions around benefits to lobby to federal government. We're able to get a funding commitment from the Labor Party prior to the election of $1.5 million. But unfortunately it was conditional on them actually being elected, so we don't actually have access to this funding anymore. But it's still a really good example of how you can use this process to facilitate the discussions and really exemplify the community value that might be provided. Stepping back into my Yarra Valley Water shoes, we are having wider discussions triggered by this project around how we can be contributing to wider livability outcomes that are generated for some of these projects. There are clear links to some of our organisational strategy commitments, but the difficulty is often how much do you contribute? One of our 2020 strategy commitments is we work in harmony with the environment. Under that, we have a commitment to pursue a restorative approach. For us, what being restorative means is really going beyond managing our environmental impacts, but actually positively contributing to the environment. And this can take different shapes or forms, and it's really starting to influence how we work with our contractors and also through our design projects about how we can influence our impacts on the environment. Our other commitment, we support thriving communities, is really about the social value that we create in some of our projects and how we can influence community outcomes through our projects. A couple of years ago we did an integrated profit and loss, which is essentially an accounting method which goes beyond financial accounting, but also to look at your environmental and social values. And we've used this process to really make a commitment to generate $20 million of social value through our projects every year. And the way that is actually quantified is really through these non-market values. The other important strategic driver for us is our commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Each year now we're monitoring and tracking against our progress against each of the goals and having an annual report around how we're tracking against those. And our commitment to these goals is really starting to drive some of these wider livability outcomes around how we're contributing to our communities. So in summary, the benefit cost analysis method is not new, but it is a really important process in facilitating the discussions. And it's really about going beyond the numbers and using it as a facilitation process, bringing everybody along on the journey around what the value of the project could be and how you're impacting the community that you're working in. There are many tools available, but I found the CRC tools and the frontier economic tools to be quite robust and user-friendly, and a really good starting point to facilitate this process. Often cost-benefit analysis is put in an appendix and not really looked at by the wider project team. You might have your economist do it on the side and attach it, but this has really been about getting the whole team across what's happening with the cost-benefit analysis. And as I mentioned, monetised benefits are a really good way of reflecting the value that we're providing to the community. It's not for everyone, and not everybody likes us monetising social benefits, but it is a really important way of having a consistent language around the value that we're providing and linking that back to our organisational priorities. We all have an increasing role to play in this space, and funding livability is a key barrier across the country. There are clear benefits that do link to our organisational priorities, but this is more about what we can all do to support overcoming this barrier to fund livability. Our community is expecting us to play a bigger role in the outcomes that we can provide. We do have a lot of touch points as an industry and a lot of influence that we can have on planning and design that go beyond just water, sewerage and drainage. Thank you.